Okay, here we go.
You don't ever forget that now, do you, Phil?
I try not to.
Good job. Justin, I didn't see
He's not
him.
here. He's taking a vacation.
Okay, Krista Silva,
Yes.
Greg Johnson,
I'm here.
Mary Brandley,
Here.
Hillary Griffiths,
Here.
Brian,
Yes, here.
Rob Savoy, I didn't see join. Krista Silva, Rob Rouleau. One, Jennifer Gaudette,
Here.
Wayne,
Here.
I'm here, Mark Anderson,
Here.
Anthony Madey. I didn't see Anthony join yet. Matthew Johan.
Here.
Nick Kane.
Here.
Perfect. We got enough. Let me read the governor's epitaph and we'll get it cranked. So pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 signed into law by Governor Healy on March 29, 2023, several pandemic-related relief provisions suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law GLC 30A Section 20 were further extended until March 31st, 2025. All members of the public are invited to join the meeting virtually, either by computer or phone, as noted below. If joining virtually, video and audio will be turned off for the public participants unless otherwise stipulated by the chair. That's it, and I'll turn it over to Phil for a moment, and then we'll vote on minutes.
Great, thanks, Jerry. Chris, you want to pull up your screen? And real quick, before we jump into the agenda, a couple people to introduce. Joe McNeil is a summer intern with Colliers. He is coming from WPI. He'll be going into his senior year. Joe's studying architecture over at WPI, so we're trying to expose him to all different types of projects and different phases of the project. So this will be his first building committee meeting, so good exposure for Joe. And then the other person we want to introduce is Kate Crosby. Kate is the energy manager from the Acton Boxborough Public Schools District. Kate was gracious enough to accept the invite to attend tonight, to hopefully provide any feedback or answer any questions folks might have relative to the geothermal HVAC system they recently installed at the Douglas Gates Elementary School in Acton, which was occupiable this past school year. So with that, we'll jump into it. So like Jerry mentioned, first order is to get into the approval of prior meeting minutes.
Okay, everybody had them. They were on the website. I sent them out again this past Thursday. These are the meeting minutes from Monday, May 8th, 2023. Were there any questions, additions, subtractions, or edits that anybody saw of any significance? I didn't receive anything. Phil didn't receive anything, so nobody is popping up right now. So by roll call vote, let's approve those minutes. Justin has not joined. Krista Silva.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Below didn't join. Jennifer.
Yes.
Thank you. Wayne.
Yes.
Approving Mark Anderson.
Yes.
Anthony, not here.
Yep.
No, I'm
Yes, here.
Oh, you are? Good boy. Thank you. Are you
Mark was tardy.
approving it? Are you approving the minutes, Anthony? Matthew.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Okay. Minutes were approved. Phil, back to you.
Thanks, Jerry. Next topic is feasibility study budget update. Since we last met in May, there has not been any invoices issued. So we have in column A, the $1 million feasibility study budget. Paid today, column D1, totaling $846K approximately, leaving a balance of approximately $149K. Any questions on the feasibility study budget update?
I have a quick question. Have we paid for the extra environmental testing out of our line item C? Is that all done and settled?
Yes, yes. There's one. So when Lord Environmental, Mount Vernon Group's environmental consultant did the initial phase 1 environmental site assessment, we're waiting for them to submit that invoice. That was done a while ago, but that'll be like probably the final invoice paid out in this feasibility study budget.
Okay.
But yes, they funny enough, they submitted for the invoice for that recent environmental borings done. Okay. Next slide, Chris. Oh, hold on, Mary, you got a
Yeah,
question?
Phil, I just had a question. When can we expect to get the reimbursement from MSBA for the feasibility study funds?
So we have to start submitting pro pay submissions into the system. So once that happens, they're very prompt to reimburse. So Wayne and I will coordinate on getting those pro pay submissions in.
So we don't have to wait until after the votes, the 2 votes in the fall?
No.
Oh,
No, we get reimbursements, Mayor, on an ongoing basis.
okay. So we've already received some then? I did not know that. That's great. Okay. All right.
Yeah, as these invoices that Phil talks about that get submitted periodically, once a month, we submit a packet to MSBA that gets approved, and the money comes back and goes straight to the town.
Okay. All right. And we're keeping track, obviously, of that, the accumulative of that, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Phil, a quick
Yeah.
thing, to hop on top of Mary's same question. Wayne, possibly could we have an update on that, maybe monthly when Phil does the update on what their billing is? Do we have an update? If there's anything to update. I mean, if you didn't get anything in a given month, that's fine. If there is, could we get an update to Mary's point? How much are we getting reimbursed and how soon is it coming in? Is that an easy or difficult thing to do?
Yeah, that can be done. It depends on what invoices and how much they are. We submit them. We do them once a month, like I said, and usually within about 2.5 weeks or so, we'll get a notice from DESI that, X number of dollars in terms of reimbursements coming, and all I do is forward that to the treasurer and the town accountant and say, here is feasibility reimbursement money that's coming your way. And then after that, it goes into their account up there, and they do whatever they do with it up there.
Yeah, I think, and just to follow up on that, it's really, really important that we know what the total amounts are, because then the town has to decide whether it's going back into the stabilization reserve or something else. So that would be really, really helpful.
Wayne, I think there's a way to go into the ProPay submit system and print out like a summary to date that shows reimbursed to date and all that. Maybe we get that over to the building committee so they can see it.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for bringing it up, Mary.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on the feasibility study budget? Okay, next topic, HVAC system discussion and vote. So like we've mentioned for some time now, the goal is to kind of finalize the discussion of the HVAC system selection and ultimately get a vote from the building committee on which system they want to go with for the project. when we last met in May, we talked about putting out a community survey to try to collect feedback from the community on this topic. On the slide here is kind of how we framed, and the thought was to show the community what the delta would be as it relates to local tax impact. In terms of the bond, that would be the dollar amount for the gas fire system, and then the bond dollar amount for the geothermal budget. So that the data on the slide here is ultimately what was made part of that online survey. So showing a bond amount for $49 million if the town was to go with the gas fire system, and then a bond amount of $54 million if it was to go with the geothermal system, and showing that how that correlates into local tax difference. Next slide, Chris. So a couple of questions we asked, and then the third question was to collect more any additional feedback folks wanted to provide. But ultimately, the first question was based on the above information, which was essentially that data within the life cycle cost analysis cost summary chart. Would you prefer to see the project have a geothermal HVAC system or a gas-fired HVAC system? In total, there were 115 responses. There was one response that didn't answer this question, but ultimately you had 30 folks choose a gas-fired HVAC system and 84 choose geothermal system. Next slide, Chris. And then the thought was to try to understand, how people felt in the event the chosen system was not what they wanted to go with. Would they still vote yes for the project, knowing that the project's needed, or if that HVAC system topic was a deal breaker? So ultimately, in the event the project chooses the HVAC system you're not in favor of, would you vote no for the project at the fall town vote? 70 people said yes, they would vote no, and then 42 said no. Next slide, Chris. So this is just a summary of kind of the additional feedback provided with question 3. So there was a total of 59 comments. To try to organize them, there was approximately 33 of them that were kind of pro geothermal, approximately 4 comments that were pro gas fired, and then the remaining 22 were kind of just miscellaneous comments. We try to provide an example of each of these types of comments. So the pro geothermal comment example, the geothermal system is an excellent opportunity to reduce the school's reliance on fossil fuels while providing a system with the lowest annual operating costs. Pro gas fired comment example, geothermal system will be more costly to maintain. And then a miscellaneous comment example, the project needs to move forward because we need a school. Please choose the best option that will build a school as soon as possible. So that's kind of the result of the online survey. And we do know that since we last met in May, there was approval on a citizen's petition to recommend to the select board that this project goes essentially non-fossil fuels. So with that, I'd like to open it up to the building committee to kind of start the discussion. And just remember, we have Kate Crosby from the Acton-Boxborough Public School District here to answer any questions as it relates to the geothermal system they have at the Douglas Gates Elementary School. Nick?
Thank you. I've got a question for Kate. I was able to tour the NESCA tour we had a while ago, and you did come out and you had a little to do at the beginning of it, but after the tour, I came back and it was mostly just the design professionals who were there to answer questions. What's been on my mind since that was something we seem to be having a hard time financing or figuring out how to finance, which is the solar canopies over parking area. And I know that I think it's a decent percentage, maybe it's even a third of the canopies of the solar cells are going to be on canopies at your school. How does that get funded in a way that helps pay for itself? Is it just the view have to be longer? We've had a few sort of number crunching sessions, and it seems that to build the canopies and put the solar on it doesn't pay for itself for, life of the school, or however far we looked. I can't remember how it was. It was maybe, 20 something years we looked out. Was there some sort of magic you made happen to get extra funding or a grant or something that was specifically for solar that we haven't seen yet?
No, it wasn't a grant, and greetings to all of you. My compliments and my hats off to all of you. This is a hard job you guys are doing. So, I appreciate your commitment and your service. And I know, Nick, there wasn't anything special. So that's interesting to me to hear. We have a 20-year PPA agreement with the solar company. And so we're buying it, we're not owning it, right? So that, I think the calculus about public entities maybe owning their own solar has changed with the IRA legislation that passed in August, but none of that was on the scene when we were making those decisions. Nexamp is doing the installation. They will own all the equipment. We're going to buy the electricity from them. So we negotiated a price per kilowatt hour with them. We are planning to install a battery along with the solar, and the battery will help reduce the price of the per kilowatt hour, because the battery can sell services to the grid and actually make revenue. So that's that. Adding a battery, unlike how it used, we used to think, batteries used to be expensive, but they're now gotten a lot cheaper and better at selling and making revenue. So adding a battery and actually helps to reduce the electricity cost. But
so it sounds like in the negotiation on the price you were paying for energy, maybe they had to factor in we're building X number of canopies. So they owned the canopies is what I was hearing, that the solar company.
Yeah. Yes, they're going to put up the steel. Okay. And so we lease the roof to them, and we'll lease the parking lot to them for putting up canopies. The airspace over the parking lot, I guess it is. All inside a power purchase agreement. So
at this preliminary stage, I don't know if we've had in-depth discussions with these guys. More it was and I could actually leave it to Phil, and if Chris is on the board, I know he was had the early conversations. What's the wag guess of how much it costs? And it was sort of like we got to a point where like, ooh, that's tough.
Right.
I don't know how much we dug into it.
So we brought them in really early because we wanted them at the table to avoid fatal flaw errors in the design. And so the price we had at that point was very soft. We then a year ago negotiated a firm price with them, which is 8.4 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the supply price, right? So we're still gonna be tied to the grid, and we're gonna be paying Eversource. And part of what we pay Eversource depends on how spiky the electricity use is in the building. And so the battery will help with that as well, because the battery will help to moderate the profile of the building.
I remember seeing some of those graphs. Those are pretty cool from the presentation.
Yeah. So, and the 8.4 cents can, if the interconnection costs are high, that could tick up a penny max, depending on the interconnection costs and if there's local taxes or pilot payments. But so 8.4 cents sounds real good. I just don't know what the other side of what the Eversource bill will look like, which will have the demand charges and whatever we need to pay to be tied to the grid. So if that's helpful, that's the price we end up with.
Okay.
But that's its own adventure that's different from the HVAC system, right? So
well, for me, it's a huge part of it, because the more electricity we have, the better that choice is. That's where I've been pushing for, and
right.
Part of our roof only component gets us a certain amount of energy, and it's like we're still depending on so much bill, basically.
Right.
So
yeah, it's nice to be able to have your own power plant if you can, for sure. But our the life cycle cost analysis that our building committee was looking at was based on 18 cents a kilowatt hour, which is our usual all in for Eversource. I don't know what you guys pay, but we're 18 cents all in, which is really expensive. So tight and so efficient. The fuel costs were the same for the gas-fired building and the electric building. So the annual utility costs were projected as the same for the two buildings, because the all electric building is really just doesn't use very much fuel, because it's super tight, super efficient.
Chris, can you go on the next slide, please? Sorry, Kate, I just wanted to. No, go ahead, Kate. I just wanted to pull this slide up.
one of the big wins for us with a new building, and converting existing buildings is more of a challenge, but with a brand new building, you can, which is what you guys are proposing, right? That's what you're looking at as a new building. And
Yep.
so the walls, you can get the building envelope phenomenally tight and phenomenally well insulated and sealed, right? So this building met what's called passive house standards. And one of the guys looked at me and said, "Lady, your house leaks more than this entire building." So they did a terrific job with the envelope, with the specs and meeting those specs. And that just really is a big help with keeping fuel costs down. So really important part of the construction.
Mary?
Yeah, thank you, Kate, very much for taking the time to meet with us. It's great. So my struggle continues to be with the geothermal is that in the schools, at least from what we've heard, there's not a lot of history about, down the road, the fact that things, it might need geothermal if we go that way, more maintenance, or when things need to be replaced, they're going to be more expensive and that kind of thing. Were you able to find history on other schools specific that have had them in place for 5 to 10 years, and so they could talk about flaws versus bonuses and that?
It's a really good point. And I mean, I had colleagues in other parts of the country who were putting up buildings like this, and schools have become early adopters of this technology, which is really interesting. You wouldn't ordinarily expect schools to show up as leaders in making choices like that, but that is what's happening. And I knew Lexington has 2 geothermal schools. Westford has a geothermal school. There were a couple others around, elementary schools. And we were looking at this is 4 years ago now. So I think the momentum has continued to build, Mary. So I can't point to something with 10 years of history, but they're wonderful. The geothermal consultant we work with is terrific. There's a lot of momentum. We're hearing from lots of communities that want to do this now because of the federal legislation and the handsome incentives from that state. I wanted to mention that BU they just opened in December a geothermal building in downtown Boston that's 19 stories tall. The geothermal wells are under the building, and they didn't have any territory to work with, so they put them under the building, and the wells go down 1,500 feet. So our wells, we have 65 wells, and they're 600 feet deep. But the BU building, and it's stacked squares that are kind of offset from each other. Some of them are shiny, some of them not. It's quite a landmark building, and that's, BU made that investment partly because of their climate commitments. So I just think there's going to be a lot of the struggle is going to be maybe getting a hold of I think there's going to be a lot of people looking to do this work, and getting a vendor. That's what we heard, was that getting a geothermal vendor was not going to be, there might be a rush. So I have heard no, in all the months and years I've been listening, I've heard no concerns about the long-term maintenance of this, that the in-ground components are very stable. People talk about a 50-year life. Of course, you're going to be replacing some of the pumps and some of the items in the mechanical room, but the in-ground component, where a lot of the investment is very stable.
Okay, all right. And just one other one, because I know this sometimes is more related to maybe residential versus schools, but like the temperature swings that we have in Massachusetts and New England, like 2 months ago when we had that ridiculously cold weather, and that is that it struggles to keep, the geothermal struggles to keep a building warm. And likewise, maybe the heat side of it. Did you hear anything having to do with that?
No, I haven't. It's really more that the building it's almost like, I mean, people are sort of used to radiant floor heating maybe, and it's like that. You're circulating water steadily at a lower temp than what a boiler would send out, and you're circulating it all the time. So the building is pretty stable, and you're not going through big setbacks at night and big pop-ups in the morning. So it actually, and partly because the envelope is tight, right? So the building actually weathers changes in outside temperature pretty easily. I want to say that we're still the building was occupied 10 months ago, and we are still doing work at the back of the house. And there are still, it's 175,000 square feet. It's got 2 elementary schools and a pre-K program in there. And because of its size, it's pretty complex in order to get to the efficiencies. So we're still doing a lot of tweaking and trying to get a hold of some of the logic and the sequences. We're going to hire a commissioning agent for the second year. I called Cambridge in the middle of the year to say, is this like the fact that we haven't landed the building yet? Talking about that, and he said we're opening our 3rd building like this, and the first year is a shakeout cruise, and year 2 and year 3 is when we really tightened the footprint and began to manage it. So that was incredibly helpful to me to hear, and it made me determined to make sure we had a commissioning agent extending it to year 2 and maybe year 3. So because the MSBA had a commissioning agent under contract, still does for the first year. But I think we want attention from somebody with that kind of smarts into year 2 as well. It's not a lot of money to hire them.
I was just going to ask, can you think off the top of your head about how much you're going to be spending for that person?
Yeah, Eversource is going to pay for 10,000 of it. So if I deduct the 10,000, we're going to be paying 13,000 maybe. I mean, I might build in a little more than that, but it's not a lot.
It's not 100,000. Yeah.
Right. For an expert to come in and go through all the sequences and make sure that everything's talking everything it should be. So I just really want this building to hit its target, and which is a super aggressive target, EUI of 23.1, very aggressive. And we want to hit it, one, because Eversource will give us the rest of our incentive, and 2, just so we're not paying extra electricity.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it's done very well this year, but occupants have been in good shape, but I would like to make sure that it's really tight and working well.
Ken?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And hey, thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to see you. Lovely to have you here. Thank you. I have a number of questions for you, but I'll ask them one at a time to let other folks jump in. The system at Douglas Gates, does that allow for simultaneous heating and cooling within the building?
It does, absolutely. Yep. Partly because it's a 175,000 square foot building. I don't know what, if something's the size of one elementary school, I think the systems are a little less complex, but yes, you want to be taking heat from the sunny side of the building and putting it over on the shady side of the building. So that helps with the efficiency.
All right. So is that accomplished? Do you have a 4-pipe distribution system? Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Ken, why don't you keep going?
All right. Just want to give somebody else a chance. All right.
Machine gun 'em, Ken. Keep going.
So as far as probably a major cost of the system is the distribution throughout the building. And I'm wondering if you can describe the techniques that the design team used to simplify the distribution and what the distribution looks like. I remember because I was there and I saw it, but you could probably describe it better.
I don't have a deep technical background, so I'm going to struggle because I know you are a highly educated person on some of these topics, so I'm going to struggle to answer your questions. The building, we circulate out of the groundwater loop brings the water into the I keep wanting to say boiler room, in the mechanical room. And from there, we circulate a chilled water loop and a hot water loop and a consolidated water loop. I think it was called compensated, but I think they settled on consolidated, which is, so the warm in the heating season, this may help other folks. I'm not sure this is exactly what you're asking, but in the heating season, the heating hot water goes up to the roof and circulates through the rooftop so that we're delivering warm conditioned air. It also goes to radiant panels. So these are what would be radiators in an old-fashioned building, but they are thinned out and elongated, and the radiant panels are actually up in the ceiling in all the classrooms. So those radiant panels are helping to either heat or cool the room depending on what's needed. And the consolidated loop that goes to the radiant panels is not as cold as the chilled water loop that goes to the roof, because we need to watch out for condensation on the radiant panels. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does. I think one of the things I noted in our narrative is we have chilled beams as well as fin tube radiation throughout the building. And when I saw in Douglas Gates, there were some locations where there may have been some fin tube, but for the most part, it was radiant panel.
Yes,
for
right.
example, in the classrooms, radiant panel with displacement ventilation.
Yes, definitely displacement ventilation, which has been a big success. Much more quiet, better air quality. It's really good.
Okay. And
Don't forget that radiant panels, Ken, we learned were both heating and cooling through the radiant panels.
correct.
They had a valve to switch between those piping loops. Those loops went around the building and went towards every panel, and it would switch between leading the cooling water or the heating water, or like you said, the the mid-range water. I can't remember, but they were
Yeah.
definitely very interesting, and they fit into the ceiling panels of the classrooms. So they just blended right into the ceiling. You didn't even know there was a big honking HVAC system or anything. It was just sitting in there with the panels over the ceiling of the windows. It's great.
I'll mention too, I think you all have a decision tonight, but on June 22nd, there are folks coming from,
Green Maynard.
I think it's, yeah, the Green
From-
Committee.
oh, is it Green Maynard? So if anybody would like to come, that's right, it is from Maynard. So if anybody would like to come and walk the building on that night, please just let me know and I can tell you how to find it.
I know you qualified it and said you're not on the deep in the technical, but do you happen to know the square footage per ton or the?
I don't know.
All right.
I can find that out and get that back to you.
Okay. Yeah, well, it seems that you have a large facility, 3 floors, and 60 wells. So I'm guessing that you have a lower load than we have estimated at this point. And we know that this is a very preliminary, this is based on about 350 to 400 square feet per ton. I'm guessing, given what you described of the building enclosure and our code requirements, that we'll probably get to something, of less load intensity for our building, probably similar to what you have at Douglas Gates. And if that building is looking at 60, we maybe, we don't know this, but maybe looking at something less than 70 wells, which is what we're projecting now.
It's actually, we actually have 65 wells, Ken, and one of the, somebody on the building committee actually offered a suggestion, which was adopted, which was to not build out the last few wells, the last 6 wells, but instead stop at 65 and put in an electric boiler. So the electric boiler is there to handle the very coldest days. It will add a bit to our operating costs, but it put a dent in the capital costs up front, and that was what the group decided to go with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's certainly an argument for having a hybrid system to allow some system to handle the peaking load, and that if we get to 80% of the load, that's going to handle the vast majority of hours of operation.
Very good. If you want to put questions in an email and send them to me, Ken, I will get answers for you.
Okay, well, I'm sure other folks had questions as well, so maybe we can collect questions as a committee so you only have one email to answer. Very
good. I mean, the building, I want to say that the building was finished on time and under budget, which was a remarkable achievement as COVID underway. And it was built on a conventional budget. It's an MSBA building. There's nothing fancy about it. And because we're 50-year owner operators, as you will be, looking at that long life cycle cost analysis was very helpful. Very different from a homeowner situation.
Marty, I got a question for you. So when they were talking about like a hybrid system, electric boiler. Do you anticipate if we go geothermal, there'll be a need for the electric boiler, or is that kind of viewed as kind of that value engineering thought?
It kind of comes down to a cost benefit analysis, depending on your cost of the wells. If you can save, I think Kate had mentioned possibly eliminate 5 wells to take that building right into the top of the design conditions and cut that number down and just pick up that, last 5 or 10% of the time when you're in that range with an electric boiler or some supplemental heat. That's a good option. And we've seen that implemented in other locations that works out well. So it kind of comes down to a cost benefit.
Okay,
Because as Kate mentioned, you lose some of your operating efficiencies, but it's such a short time period that, the numbers work out that could be an option.
okay. Any other questions for Kate?
Yeah, Phil, just a quick statement to Kate's point about having a tour of the school. I did send out the email to all the building committee members regarding the tour of the school building on June 22nd at 5 p.m. And that if anybody is interested, they should send an email or call Orion Green and just acknowledge that you're interested, and she will get back to you because I've sent my email and I'm just awaiting information back as to how to get to the building. Looking forward to it. Thank you. That's all I had.
Yeah, I mean, our building committee made this decision when it was really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The 50-year life cycle cost analysis made it look like the 2 scenarios were equivalent, more upfront for the geothermal, lower operating costs. And that was before the federal legislation, and mass save incentives were not as handsome as they are now. So I've heard people talk about 10 years of carrots and then 10 years of sticks in helping people get over this sort of technological leap to a technology that we're not as familiar with. So it's a great time to collect carrots.
Marty, you got your hand raised? You're
Muted.
Marty.
Sorry, Kate, I know you guys are relatively new with the building up and running, within the first year or so. Have you guys had any feedback on operating cost, or is it too soon?
I don't yet.
Yeah.
So this is part of what I was alluding to. There are 39 submeters to
Yep.
measuring all the electrical feeds in the building, or most of them. And those only went live April 7th. Last month, I just last week, I got access to the data. So I just, as an energy manager, it's been driving me crazy. I don't have any good detail. But
No, understood. Yeah, it's early in the game for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Coming soon.
I actually have a point to that for our committee. If we are going to partake, so I think these guys were a pilot program and Eversource didn't have all the rules laid out for how to get our $1.2 million we have on our life cycle cost analysis here. We need to hit goals and prove that we hit goals in that first year. So we would need to bake in X number of submeters and having our commissioning agent on board and verifying if we're to get our money. So that's a thing for us to consider as well. I think, Kate, you guys had some leeway as pushing the program and figuring out how to make it work. And, I don't think you had a hard fast at month 11, we're going to come back and check. And you better hit the goal.
Right. I don't know if we're looking at the same, we're probably looking at the same thing. And that verification year, those 12 months, we haven't started yet. Because I kept saying the building the building isn't quite there yet, not quite there yet. I was hoping for leniency and we've been given it. I don't know, they probably don't want me saying that. So we'll probably start July 1. So, which is, 10 months behind our occupancy. So
that we didn't quite get to that level of the discussion, which I think is good to know that there is at least negotiation on what is day one. So that helps me understand that there's not quite as heavy a set of strings attached to the money.
Yeah, they're learning. I mean, it was actually Kim Cullinane from Eversource who sent me to Cambridge to talk to them. when I was saying, I'm concerned, she said, go talk to Brandon. So I had a great conversation with Brandon Roy, and he said, yeah, the first year is a shakeout cruise, don't worry.
Yeah, Kim did talk to us too. That was a good presentation she made from the Eversource team.
Great.
Any other questions for Kate?
How much does the battery cost? That's so good.
I'm sorry, how much what?
The battery then now I want to get as well as part of the system.
Oh, I mean, the battery is cheap, it makes the whole thing cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So it's all inside that PPA package, and we'd be paying more per kilowatt hour if we didn't have the battery. So,
yeah.
And it'll also help reduce our electricity bills from Eversource, because it's going to be shaving peaks off of the building. So yeah, if you're looking at solar, I'd talk to your vendor about adding a battery.
I'll put on my list, Phil. That's my next.
Got it.
Yeah, they play well with each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. We really appreciate it. You could stay on if you want.
Oh, I had one more question.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Kate, what is your background that you're so astute at this? This is amazing to me, that you have all of these answers.
I've been in my position for a while. That's part of my secret, Mary. I'm coming up on 13 years at the district, and I started this job with high interest, and I'm working on behavioral strategies to get teachers to shut things off, custodians to shut things off, and we made some money that way, and I just kept going. So I kind of stepped into this field at a time when it was really wide open, and it still is somewhat wide open, and I just have it's something that I care about a lot, and I've been able to get a good response. I'm inside the schools, so that's a help, right? I don't live at town hall. I live inside the schools. They think of me as a friend, not a foe, and just have our electricity bill when we started was $1.4 million a year, and we've cut $500,000 off it. So our electricity use is down 39% from our benchmark year. So and all that is just money we don't even spend anymore. So it's great. I love money, and I love working on energy. And the chance to move these buildings in a direction where our emissions are also going down is really exciting. So
excellent. Thank you. Kudos to you.
Thank you. And to you all as well. You have a long road ahead of you still. So I know that moment when you're trying to figure out what town meeting is going to vote and trying to get it right. So best of luck.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate it.
Yep, and I'll hope to see some of you on the 22nd. And I'm happy to book another date as well if that works better for anybody on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Greatly appreciated. Greatly
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
You bet.
Greg, do you want to just quickly give us an overview of the citizens petition that passed and what that means to the project?
Yeah, so you mentioned it earlier how it was a recommendation. So it was a recommendation to the select board. I think because the concept is the select board is, acting on behalf of the entire town if they're the ones signing contracts at the end of the day. But it was a suggestion to the select board to have it to be I don't want to misquote it, but I believe it was net zero carbon school. I'm not reading it, so I don't know. I remember off the top of my head, but that was the concept, and it did pass, as well as the other citizens petition which was to implement the stretch code, the new opt-in stretch code. But anyways, two different concepts, but still the kind of related when it comes to the approach of energy efficiencies and sensitivities to our energy usage. But right, so again, non-binding for the citizens petition about net zero carbon school, but it's a political gesture if nothing else, like similar to the survey. It's sort of like informational persuasion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Craig. Go ahead, Jerry. You want to?
Yeah, I guess so. Is there any additional discussion from the committee members regarding a choice of HVAC system at this point? I think you've heard from Kate, you've heard from our consultants multiple times over the last few months. Pros and cons of fossil fuel versus geothermal, you know, political aspects of it, financial aspects of it. And I think it's time right now to vote. So if somebody,
Nick has his hand
Wait,
raised,
I
Jerry.
got one quick thing,
oh, go ahead.
just to make sure it was clear. At the Acton building, even with the ground source heat pumps, I think having the dehumidification system as well as their radiant heating and cooling system, I think that it helped reduce the load needed for the heating and cooling system because the dehumidification system helped
Mhm.
take some of that. We haven't talked about mixing that together yet for our systems. And I don't know if that's something we want to try and like, are we trying to mimic these guys or are we still trying to stay on our couple of lines here? I know Chris's head's going to explode.
Not at all.
So I just didn't, I'm just trying to figure out when we say, I think we know what the gas fired system is with the displacement ventilation. When we go geothermal, do we still need to then figure out exactly if we're going to try and like nuance that, or are we just going to say it's exactly as we've said with beams and that's it?
Marty, can you take that?
Sure. I think the terminal units at this point is something that we can, discuss as we move forward. I think the difference between a chilled beam and a radiant ceiling from a cost point of view and operation point of view is very similar. So we can apply displacement ventilation with the geothermal system, as we talked about before. So I don't think that's something that would impact the decision you folks are looking to make tonight. The terminal components of that can be decided as the project develops beyond schematic design.
Yeah.
Chilled beams are a fine option. Radiant panels are also a very good option. Some of it plays into what are we doing for lighting? What are we doing for ceiling grid? So a little bit more of the design details at that point, but I don't think it's a critical decision at this point that needs to be made.
I just want to make sure it's clear that displacement was not going away if we got rid of the gas system. So
Yep.
that's clear to the group now. Okay, thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, and also, and I don't know if I'm micromanaging it, is this a point at which we would also say we want that battery backup, or is that getting too detailed at this moment in time? I mean, I guess to Nick's point, like what do we need to vote on to make this work, to make it be the best for the building?
Ultimately going non-electric with the geothermal system or going with non-gas with the geothermal system or going with a gas-fired system. That's the vote. We're gonna coordinate with Select on the battery topic with them. That's more kind of renewable energy topic though.
Yeah, and the current discussion is we are only committing to as many solar cells so far as we have on the roof. Anything else I think is gravy if we can negotiate for canopies. I think that's sort of how we've been looking at the math so far.
Right, and trying to figure out kind of full offset how much square footage that's going to take up.
It doesn't have to be full. I mean, if we get some more on some parking spaces and we figure out how that impacts, it doesn't go wrong with enough. Like, when you work up to 100%, everything you get closer to 100% is great.
Mhm.
So
Sure.
The idea of going geothermal means more dependence on the electric component. So everybody knows. I still have hopes that we can whittle away that dependency on incoming power, but we're not voting on 100% electric yet. It's just we're not there.
Correct.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion. So I have,
Sorry, can I just
Go ahead,
add,
Mary.
so Nick, when you say we're going the geothermal, but we're not totally electric, I thought they're one and the same. Like, what are we saying?
We're not totally off the grid. We're not self-generating. Like,
Okay,
the design for Acton has enough solar eventually that they are approaching that net zero. They have enough electricity generation to offset the cost of their system. We are not there yet. We don't have enough square footage. We didn't get canopies. They are covering a whole bunch of parking lot. So they're their
if we-
system is more self-sufficient than ours.
Okay,
at
so
this
if
point.
we do, like Justine kept saying, if we want it totally net zero, we have to cut down 2 acres worth of trees to put solar panels there. We're not necessarily going that direction yet. We're not fine
Correct.
tuning this yet, okay?
Correct.
All right.
Yep, that's not what we're voting on tonight. That's hopefully we'll go in that direction in the future. But today, we're voting the difference between fossil fuel or going, all electric, would be geothermal at this moment. So I have the easy part. I'm going to ask for the votes. The difficult part is for whomever would like to step up and make the motion. Or Phil, do we even need to, could we use what's already written in here, the geothermal heat pump and its description as the motion?
Sure. What exactly are you looking at? You mean the description on the LCCA chart here?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no particular vote language you gotta use, so whatever makes sense.
So if somebody would agree to the language that's written there or add something themselves that would make it correct or more correct, and then we can have a discussion if need be, a second on that motion. Because I don't want to just do a vote on something we haven't made a motion on. Just from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, that's all.
I'll stick my neck out and I will make a motion to have our committee vote on the proceeding with our design with a geothermal heat pump system.
Second.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to think, do I have to have any caveats to that? I don't think we do.
No.
We already said we don't have to have the rest of the stuff talked
No.
about, so.
Yeah, that's
thank you.
fine, yep.
Yeah,
Yep, not really. And Brian, that was very quick on the draw. Very, very good, John.
I think Brian
I'd
has
ask-
to be.
I'd ask you how you feel about it, Brian, but I'll hold off on that for a minute. Okay, any further discussion on that? On the motion that's on the table right now? I don't see any hands up, and Phil doesn't see any hands up. Okay, Justin is not here. Krista Silva,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Hillary,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
What a surprise. Rob did not join. Is Rob here? Rob did not join.
Yes, he's here.
Oh, Rob is here? Okay, and Jennifer? I know
Yes.
Jennifer. Perfect, thank you. Wayne,
Yeah,
thank you. I'm a yes. Mark Anderson,
No.
okay. Anthony Madey,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
It is not unanimous, all yes votes, one no vote. And we will record that accordingly. That's it. Thank you, folks. We have, I think, the main accomplishment we're looking for this evening was to have a presentation by Kate and to take the vote and discussion on moving from fossil fuel to geothermal. I think the survey that was sent out helped that decision-making process. I think time over the last few months and discussion and research by various members of the committee has helped that discussion. Some of us may still have mixed feelings which is the right way to go, but this appears to be the appropriate direction. So with that, I will be quiet and turn it back to Phil.
Great, thank you, guys. Next slide, Chris. So the next thing we wanted to discuss is community outreach. Since we last met, I know there's been a group of people, building committee members that have kind of gone out to the community and have some coffee talks and whatnot. And then on the slide, we're showing picking things up after summer break, August through September, community forums, select board presentation, school committee presentation, FinCom, senior center, And then having the school district put project information into their weekly bulletins. And then ultimately, we have our October town meeting presentation. But I was hoping to have Mary or Jennifer or Anthony or somebody that's been kind of helping out over the past month, meeting with community members, kind of hear how that's gone.
Yeah, so I can start. We did go, Anthony and Jennifer and I went to the Rio Road playground on Saturday from 10 to 12. Wasn't a huge turnout. I think there were 5 or 6 families that came by in between. I will tell you that a number of them are not on Facebook. So we really need to do serious outreach. People have stopped following Facebook for different reasons in that. And I know Jennifer and Anthony and I had conversation about that piece. The good thing is that I think 5 out of the 6 offered to do a coffee. So even though it wasn't a huge turnout, we've got a really good, and that's the young families that have kids that aren't even in school yet, which is one of the big populations that we need to reach out to. Mark Anderson generously offered to do a coffee at his house on Friday, June 23rd, which will be great too. I've got a couple of other people that offered to do them, different demographics, but at the end of school, it was too crazy. So we'll be reaching out to them. But I'm going to follow up with the Boys and Girls Club to see, they've got their summer program, to see if there's 2 or 3 times that we can be there at the end of a day for parents, so that we can have info. And it was very informal. We didn't do a formal presentation. We had the big school poster. We had some handouts. Thank you, Chris, for getting that information on Friday, because I was able to make copies, as well as the trifolds and that. But it was very informal, which was great. We just kind of walked over to people and started talking to them. So Boys and Girls Club, also the farmers market. We can't unfortunately be part of the farmers market because they look at this as being political. It is to a certain extent, the yes or no, but we can stand outside on the sidewalk. So as people are coming and going, again, we can just be there informally and that kind of thing. But loud and clear, we have to, and Jerry came by too, which was great. Jerry came by while we were over there. Loud and clear is that there, and I'll let Anthony or Jennifer talk to, that there are just like 2 or 3 bullets that we have to keep hammering in. But the other thing is we have to do a good old fashioned handing out of flyers at neighborhoods, and with like these same basic comments or bullets that that are really going to speak to people, because that's really the way that we're going to be able to hit a lot of people. And a number of the people that were there on Saturday also offered to hand out flyers, which is great too. So we have to start a database. That's the piece that I need somebody that's more astute at that stuff than I am, so that we can start adding, because the people are, they want updated information. We're not, as things go on, like, when the town meeting is, when the vote is, at town meeting, hopefully, as long as it passes, what does reconsideration mean? How fast and what do we do there? And all those kind of specific criteria. So I'll let Anthony or Jen talk about their piece.
Yeah, that sums it up, Mary. Of the people, maybe about 10 people total of the adults that we talked to. They were all in favor. For some at this point, they were a couple were like, you know what, just whatever. They're sick of we settled the HVAC debate. They're like, let's just get this project and get behind it. At this point, we're done with the discussion. Definitely we need. I think the things that seem to resonate the most when we went through the talking points were, that a no vote doesn't mean 0. That one is the one that I think needs to get across a lot. Is that a no vote doesn't mean no money, and that when we told them, like, well, this is what that it's that $35 million estimate to bring it back to where it was in 1988 without solving the problems. The other thing that seemed to resonate was when we explained that, even though it's 54, but you're getting 35 million back in it is essentially a tax rebate because MSBA comes through your tax money. That seemed to really resonate with people too. They were like, oh, they hadn't thought of it that way. But the fact that they're getting tax money back, those 2 points alone, I think seem to get the biggest response, at least in all the people that we talked to.
Yeah, I kept mentioning that, do you want your sales tax dollars to go help another community get a new school, or do we want to do it, help ourselves get something, because we're paying the money, so let's help ourselves.
Mark,
Yeah, Mary, just a note on going to the Boys and Girls Club this summer during summer program. Keep in mind that depending on grade level, they can have pickup at multiple different locations. It can be at the club or it can be over at the high school or at Fowler sometimes. So just make sure that when you talk to them, you make sure you capture all of the pickup areas because the younger kids sometimes will be over at the high school.
Perfect, thank you. And that reminds me of basic too, right? The basic program I just thought of, because they've got a summer school. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
And just to interject a quick thank you, and I did stop by. And I would like to definitely thank Mary, Anthony, and Jennifer for taking their Saturday morning. At least the snow wasn't flying. It finally got a little warm. Not as warm as I'd like, but it was pretty good. And the conversation was good. I was there for a conversation with a couple of the parents. I thought it was excellent and interesting that they were asking so many questions. And now I understand it better, where Mary said they're not on Facebook. Now that answers some of it because they just didn't see, hadn't heard a lot of that information. So that was certainly enlightening to me. And thank you very much. And Mark, thank you ahead of time for offering for Friday night for the 23rd of June. To your point, Mary, we need to do a number of these during the summer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to that point, we're going to need more than Jennifer and Anthony and I. By the
Yes.
way, we're going to be calling on everybody to really help out here.
Yes.
I think it's also good for people to see different faces too,
Yeah.
different of the members. And it was interesting to me, at least two of the people that were there thought that we were already down the road of building the school. It's like, what do you mean we have to vote? I think they thought that the feasibility study that we voted on meant that we were moving forward. So there's just so many misconceptions out there of where we are in the process and what their part is, what role they need to play.
Yeah.
Jen, did you have anything extra that you wanted to share? Is she still here?
No, I did a good job summarizing it. I think one of the things that I noticed that a couple of the families that had younger kids were like, oh, I'm going to miss it. And so just getting the timeline down of like, what is the benefit, even if their children aren't going to be directly in the schools, in the school itself. And, I think talking through sort of the gem that is Maynard education and what benefit this has. And Mary is certainly better at this than probably all of us, but talking about sort of property values and all the rest of it in terms of the schools was important.
I know Mark and Ken, you got your hand raised. Just one thing, and I'll direct it to Jerry and Mary and whoever wants to take it. If you guys want to set up some community outreach subcommittee just to kind of nail down a forum timeline, or just kind of schedule when we're going to get out, just let us know.
Okay.
And we can set something up.
Be great. Thank
And
you.
we can kind of report back to the building committee, so our next building committee meeting, will be a month from now. Potentially, we have our first meeting before that, so we can report back to the building committee on what we are thinking for a timeline for community forums and whatnot.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, and then you have your PAC, political action committee, that kind of group that's going to help fund, like, so when Mary's talking about flyers, and then when you get closer, signs, stuff like that. That'll have
Yeah,
to get
we're going to need to have that conversation because we haven't done that yet. So,
Right.
yeah.
Mark.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce something that Jerry and Mary both said, about, there's a lot of people that don't know anything about this because they're not on Facebook. I don't think we can overstate that at all. In my experience over the last few months talking to people, the overwhelming majority of town has no clue about this project. We have a ton of education ahead of us. A lot of people are going to question a lot of things we think are settled because there's a lot of people that just are in the dark right now. So that's all.
Okay. Ken.
Thanks, Phil. And just to add to what Jennifer brought up about values, property values, and Mary, I know this is your field. And so that's, again, it circles back to a no does not mean zero, right? So if we pay less in taxes, our property values are depressed relative to what they would otherwise be. And when I look at that 600 so a year in taxes, I think I would much rather not pay that. But I'm also pretty sure that property value will increase because of this by $1,000 or so a year more than it otherwise would. So
Or
there's,
at least stay stable even.
yeah, or at least stay
Versus-
stable. So
versus
to
property.
make some connection to people's, the value of their property, that's their most significant asset. And even for folks that are on this income or retired, if their property becomes less valuable, they have fewer assets to tap into. So it's a asset maintenance expense that yields a good return, put it that way. Thank you.
Charles?
You're muted, Charles.
Charles, you're muted.
Charles and I were already at a meeting.
Here I go, here I go.
All right.
I think should know by now how to unmute. I've had a great deal of experience with this. So the first thing I want to say, it's fantastic getting to people to talk to them. But the second thing people have to do is go to town meeting. Many people will say, oh, yes, that's wonderful. But if they're not in the habit of going to town meeting, there's a little problem. So the first thing I was wondering, are there lists available of people who've gone to town meeting, the last couple of town meetings? Is that something that town hall can give us, or?
We can get that, yeah.
Because I think contacting the people who are regular town meeting members, town meeting attendees, I think is important. But secondly is when we're talking to people, emphasizing just how important it is to get to the town meeting, because they can be all in favor of the building, but if they're not there to vote, it's not going to do us any good.
Good
I'm
thought.
speaking from experience, by the way.
Great comment. I hadn't really looked at it that way, Charles. Thank you very much. That is helpful. You're right. Everybody can say yes. And if you look back, you know, somebody looks at the records, you're going to find I have not attended the last few town meetings. Whoops, sorry.
I just, on that, following up on that, just as a segue, the town meeting that we were just at, that the school department tried to get, additional funding. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who apologize for not being at the town meeting.
Right.
So they were like, I didn't realize my vote was so important. So.
Mary, even teachers who live in town.
Yes, exactly, Charles. Yes. Yeah.
What I found, just a quick side note, what I found really embarrassing the other day on Saturday morning, I had to use MapQuest to find the playground, because although I've lived in the town for 24 years, I've never been to the Rio Road playground. I've never had a reason to. Didn't have any idea at all where it was. It's a beautiful playground.
That's why they call it the maze.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
You can't get out of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
It's great for trick or treating, though.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a maze, but yeah, I was embarrassed. I had to tell my wife, I said, I want to go, but I have no idea where it is. Oh, well, we found it. That was good. All right, I'll be quiet. Back to you, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. I think takeaways on this is maybe offline, Mary will try to set up a community outreach subcommittee to develop a timeline, and we can kind of speak to it at the next building committee meeting. And that'll be that.
When is the next building committee meeting, Phil?
So we don't have it set, but 4 weeks from today is July 10th, if that works for people.
I mean, it should. I mean, it's not a holiday, so, granted, it's vacation time. Some people will be off. Well, they can dial in too. That's the advantage of doing the meetings this way.
Yeah, I see Roger has his hand raised. I just want to run through this timeline slide and we can go to him. So May 18th, we had the MSBA project scope and budget transition meeting. Jerry was there, Greg was there, Brian was there, Colliers, Mount Vernon Group. It's a meeting where MSBA steps through the project budget. So we submitted a full project budget through our schematic design submission. They review it. And if there's any discrepancies or deltas or things they see differently, it's at this meeting where they present to us, their view on the total project budget. Ultimately, what we submitted to them is what they're approving. So the numbers that have been presented to folks are the numbers that are going to be part of the project scope and budget agreement with MSBA. We're at our June 12th building committee meeting, and then big date, June 21st, is the MSBA Board of Directors meeting where the board approves our schematic design submission. And that's that kind of approval to enter into that project scope and budget agreement between the MSBA and the town. And we talked about community outreach, and we have the special town meeting October 10th and debt exclusion vote on November 7th. Any questions on the timeline?
Oh, so can I just ask a quick, could you send the previous sheet to us? I just want to have that in writing, not this one as much as the other one that we talked about. Yeah, that guy. Can
Yep.
you send that over if you wouldn't mind when you get a chance?
Yep.
Just to sort of keep us moving in the right place. Thanks.
And Roger,
Okay.
although you've had your hand up for a minute or two, I need to finish out. We will open it up to non-committee members in a couple of minutes. Jennifer has her hand up. Jennifer Gaudette, please go ahead.
Thank you. The timeline that you just went through, Phil, just reminded me that something I hadn't realized that Mary mentioned on Saturday, which is that the community vote is going to be on election day, which is a national election. And so that's another point of emphasis we really need to have to folks, is come out to town meeting, but we absolutely need you also at that. And the fact that it's a national election, that's gonna drive numbers up. So just reminded me of that point to make.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
So just to reiterate, so we said Monday, July 10th for the next building committee meeting.
Yes,
Perfect.
That works.
yes. Yep.
Okay.
Are you good, Phil, for now?
Yep, all good, yep.
All right, Roger, go ahead.
Roger?
Yeah, Roger, you're unmuted, but I don't hear anything. Are there any others attending this meeting that are non-committee members or non-consultants? Roger, can you hear us?
Is there a way to turn chat on for him? I know it says disabled because the recording is on.
That I don't know. That's beyond my technical capabilities.
Roger, did you want to we can't, are you saying we can't do the chat thing?
He can chat to any of the meeting owners or it's not owners. What is the name? The
host.
rulers of the meeting.
It looks like Hillary Griffiths has her hand up.
Go ahead, Hillary.
Nope, that was the baby. Sorry.
Oh.
What does the baby want to say?
Baby has her hand up.
That's too cool.
I'm sending Roger a quick email. If you can still hear me, Roger, if you want to reach out to me. This is Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll see it in the chat if he wants to type something in the chat.
Yeah, if he wants to take the time after the fact and send Nick an email with, more detail, maybe, that's fine. And Nick can get it to the rest of to whoever needs to answer his question.
Can I just ask a question while maybe Roger's typing something?
Yep, go for it.
Phil, would it be okay for us, for you, myself, maybe Anthony and Jennifer, I think Mark wanted to help too, and anybody, just to have like a Zoom meeting, a separate Zoom meeting, before the next meeting to figure out that schedule kind of thing.
Yes,
That would be great.
yep.
Yeah,
Time's
I'll
a-
join, I'll join that too.
That'd be great. Yeah, time's a ticking, so I really want to get that
Yep.
going.
Yep.
Also, just in general, is there people who are interested in going to the Acton School? I have been once. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to go again, but I know Jerry wants to go and might need to have somebody help him find his way so he doesn't get lost again.
Now that I know it's 5 o'clock, I can go because we've got a school committee meeting after that. So 5 o'clock works for me, so I will be there.
Yeah, I sent Orion Green an
Yeah.
email over the weekend, says
Okay.
that I wanted to go. So she said, she indicated in her email that I sent to everybody that she would let us know several days ahead of the 22nd. So,
Thanks
I-
for geothermal, Roger says.
ah,
There you
We
go.
found the technology.
great, great. Orion Green has her hand up. Go
Yes,
ahead, Orion.
hi. I'm the person organizing the tour to the Douglas Gate School on June 22nd. I tried to get everybody on this committee on the invitation list, but if I didn't, or you haven't gotten back to me, I'm coordinating, so it's goes to ORIANG375 @gmail. Let me know and I will send you the directions and information about parking and time. I hope you can come. It's a wonderful tour.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I plan on being there. Thank you very much for
Thanks,
Orion for
Orion.
coordinating this. This is good. Any other information from the trustees? Never mind, wrong meeting. Committee members. I don't see any hands up. I don't hear anybody yelling. I would certainly entertain one more motion. And you can take a wild guess what it might be.
I'll make the motion that we adjourn.
Very good. I was,
Us-
and that was
Second.
seconded. Who seconded it? Mary?
I can.
Okay, perfect. All right. Roll call. Chris DeSilva.
Yes.
Thank you. Greg,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Hillary,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Wayne.
Yes.
I mean, yes. Mark Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Anthony,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Nick. Perfect. I heard you whispering. All right. Thank you, folks. That was it. Looking forward to our next meeting and looking forward to